Our next topic. The NDC has been mounting a strong defense for its electoral reform proposals, and they've been speaking about it, and it's been a debate about which comes first as well, constitutional reform, or we go straight to making certain amendments which are easier, changing the rules of court and the like, to ensure that we have some electoral reforms. So all of that coming up next. Our guest is Appointing Ankrah, the NDC's Director of Elections, and Albert Kofi Ahen, a former Director of Elections at the Electoral Commission. We'll be bringing that to you shortly. But let's hear Nana Atudadze and Professor Kwame Ahoy that addressed the media recently about these issues.
We would urge His Excellency the President to accept the interpretation of the Apex Court, that's the Supreme Court, as the correct interpretation of the Constitution and the law, and proceed to urgently activate the processes for the early implementation of the constitutional reforms as set out by the Constitutional Reform Committee on 20th December 2011.
They did not show us which problems they were trying to solve. Nobody has complained about voting hours in this country. So why would you ignore all the problems that we are seeing and then jump to try to resolve an imaginary problem about voting hours, thereby suggesting that we should be closing polls by 3 p.m. It defies logic.
This business about take it to IPAC is ex post facto. That's why sometimes you see, by their own conduct, they create the impression as if perhaps somebody is pushing them to do something. Because this is the official response. That response was very clear. We have received your proposals and we will get back to you. Sent to the Electoral Commission. So what then is the basis? A few days or weeks after, go to IPAC.
IPAC meetings are called by the Electoral Commission. So when we submit a proposal to the Electoral Commission, it is the responsibility of the Electoral Commission to table it at the IPAC meeting, which it convenes. So for me, it baffles me that it says we should table it at IPAC. As I said, let her show us the IPAC secretariat. We'll go and table it there.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Keypoints Live on TV3 and 3FM. And today we're talking about the NDC's electoral reforms, probing the proposals, assessing the viability. And I know we had an initial discussion on this some 2 weeks ago, but at that time, the NDC hadn't really fully come out. But this week, they've put up a strong defense of their proposals, and it's raised a lot of discussions about what comes first. What's the priority? Do we engage in constitutional reform to get some of those reforms they've put forward through? Or do we amend the rules of court? Do we amend the Political Parties Act that will allow for some of the other reforms which seem probably more doable to go through? Today we welcome Appointing Ankrah, the Director of Elections for the NDC, to our studios. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Appointing Ankrah.
Good morning, Jifa, and thank you very much for having me.
It's been quite a while.
Yes. I haven't seen you since your other incarnation.
Let's also welcome Albert Kofi Ahen, who will be joining us via Zoom. But let me start with Mr. Appointing Ankrah. So with the NDC's views about electoral reform, there are questions about whether this is about how you felt treated, how the party felt treated during the 2020 elections, or has the NDC really been on a mission over a period to, put forward their views about how we can improve our electoral system?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. Let me start by putting the issues in context. So you recall that after the 1992 elections, the MPP boycotted the parliamentary elections because they felt that the processes were not fair and transparent. And so we had virtually an NDC in Parliament with the Eagle Party. And so civil society, donor community, everybody felt that you needed to create a platform where the then opposition will have the opportunity to also spell out their grievances and issues. And that's how come IPAC was born under Dr. Appointing. So IPAC was born to create a platform where we could generate consensus on electoral issues and put in place systems, mechanisms, processes, and procedures to improve upon our electoral system. Because you know that the law is very clear about the independence of the Electoral Commission. However, when it comes to practical governance, stakeholder consultation is a key component of practical governance and administration. So the IPAC has been able to churn out a lot of reforms that has enhanced our entire electoral architecture. For example, moving from opaque ballot boxes to transparent ballot boxes, moving from the introduction of counting of votes at the polling station and declaring same, the use of photo ID cards, the biometric register that we have today, to the extent that at the time that they were even going to procure the first biometric register, there were two committees that were formed at the IPAC, a technical committee and a legal committee. And therefore, even the constitutional instruments, CIs that are drafted and sent to Parliament, the political parties had an input. And then when it comes to the procurement of biometric or other equipment, the political parties, the technical committee also had an input. And so that was how the IPAC evolved, and it's been very, very useful. So after the 2013 Supreme Court decision, you know, the MPP went to court. The court, in giving its verdict, actually pronounced that the EC should reform itself. And so consequent to that, the EC then set up a committee. And I have the committee's report here, a report of the Electoral Reform Committee submitted to the Electoral Commission of the Republic of Ghana, April 2015. And you can see the membership. We had Georgina Opokwa Mankwa, Mrs. Rebecca Kabuki Ajal. These are all members of the EC. Johnson Asidun Ketia represented the NDC. Kwabena J. Japan represented the MPP. Mr. James Kwabena Bonfe represented the CPP. Mr. Enin Kofi Addo representing the YPP. Dr. Ransford Jampo, member representing the IEA CSOs, Mr. Kwesi Jonah, member IDEC, and then Dr. Franklin Odro from CDD, and Mr. Christian Owusu-Pare was the secretary. So they came out with a number of reforms, about 15 or so. Now, these reforms came towards the latter part of Dr. Appointing's tenure, and so he couldn't do anything about it. And then Madame Charlotte Osei came in, and then she was also preparing for the 2016 election, so she couldn't do much about it. And we all know she was removed. Madame J. Mensah came in, and Madame J. Mensah inherited these reform recommendations. Unfortunately, she was not able to implement any of them. And we also found that she took a posture that the EC is independent, and she's not bound by IPAC decisions, and therefore she was not very open to that consensual process that we all had at IPAC. What we found was that over a very short period of time, about 11 political parties were registered. And so you go to IPAC and you have all manner of parties, and then when discussions are had and we come, normally what happens is that issues that we agree on, we move them forward. Issues where there's no consensus, we stand them down, and then we continue the consultation process behind the scenes. In fact, when she was at IEA, she was very instrumental in resolving issues through the political parties platform. So issues that were contentious, we move out of IPAC, we go to the political parties platform, we debate, we discuss, and then we arrive at the consensus. So she then brought in a lot of these political parties, and then when issues come to the crunch, they say, okay, then let's vote.
But is it fair to say she brought in the political parties, new political parties registered for the 2016 elections?
Okay, so the 11 political parties appeared during and then I'm just telling you the practicality of what happened. But that's aside.
That's just beside the point. hold on. So voting was not part of the normal process in IPAC.
In the past.
Subsequently,
Yes.
during Mrs. Mensah's era, that's what has happened.
And then you see the spirit and posturing, there was something went wrong, and we will not listen to you. I'm sure you know about people saying the NDC is a threat to Ghana's democracy and all those things. So the whole environment was not congenial. And after the elections, usually after elections, what happens is that, again, it is the political parties together with CSOs, they then discuss the needed reforms. But again, the EC had a meeting and brought out 4 reforms.
Okay, hold on. The CSOs and the political parties did have a post-mortem. CDD, Kodeo had that event in Ada. But you chose as the NDC, yes, you were at the Kodeo event, but you chose as the NDC not to be at the EC 2-day workshop.
Yes, because we felt that we would not legitimize a process that would not produce genuine and sincere and enduring reforms. As I told you...
But weren't you just being judgmental? Because the elections were over, there's really nothing to fight about anymore.
If the elections were over, and that is all the more reason why you needed a very open and transparent process in a very congenial atmosphere to discuss the issues.
You didn't have that, so you felt you wouldn't proceed.
So we did a temporary boycott of IPAC, and it's important for people to understand that boycotts are legitimate tools in a democracy, particularly when it's temporary. When you do a temporary boycott, for instance, when people walk out in Parliament, it becomes news. Why have you walked out? Then you now explain, because we've tried to use the platform to bring out issues consistently, and it's not been working. So we felt that if we stay, we become part of that process where there was no room for consensual ideas, especially from our side, and there will be legitimizing that process. And so we took a step back and say, okay, let's go back and look at the entire electoral architecture. Because over the years, in any case, every electoral system needs to be fine-tuned. It's like a vehicle. You always need to go for servicing, change the plugs and change the oil, and make sure that the system is fine-tuned. What is our current electoral system? What has been our experiences in the past? Against the backdrop of the reform proposals that have not yet been implemented, and then what we experienced in 2020, what then can we do? So it's not just about 2020. 2020 was a catalyst. It was a key factor, no doubt about it. But we had to look at the entire electoral architecture. We've been doing this for almost 30 years. What are the things that have been impeding the smooth functioning of our democratic process? What can we do to ensure that the systems, the mechanisms, and the institutions are strengthened such that at the end of every electoral process, we would all be satisfied? For example, in 1992, when the young people were not satisfied with the system, they wrote the stolen verdict. When they now brought reforms, and it's instructive to note that most of the reforms, opaque ballot boxes, transparent ballot boxes, and all those
color
things,
ID cards,
most of them came from the MPP. And the NDC at that time, the government in power, we went along with them, and Dr. Afriyie created the atmosphere for us to have those kinds of reforms. So it helps. So reform really does enhance the electoral. So we went back and then we looked at, so we formed a team. And when we formed the team, we said, look, because we are partisan people, we will not lead. So we'll get people who are, they're part of the party, but based on their background experience, they have the broad knowledge and a little above partisanship. And
they evoke a certain, national appeal.
Exactly.
Okay. And that's why you had what?
So
Nana Tudaze
and
Professor Kwame Ahoy.
So we, as NDC, we also submitted our proposals to them. And then they also they looked at existing electoral reforms, the 2015 reforms.
So they looked at the reform document that existed.
Then they looked at international and domestic literature on electoral reforms. They looked at international best practices on electoral systems. They conducted interviews with some former top management staff of the EC. They examined our position paper, and they had access to some documentation from the EC. So following that, out of that came
the reforms that
yeah.
the
And then when
NDC has put forward.
Exactly. So we realize that these are proposals, technical proposals. So let's then move the next step forward and now engage civil society and other stakeholders. So we've met a coalition of CSOs. We met a whole
I
host
understand
of
you've
them.
met the TUC.
We met the TUC. We met organized labor. You know, there's a group
Okay,
that
so
are
there's-
outside the
yes,
TUC.
that's true.
Then we met the TUC too. We've met the US Embassy, UK High Commission, Canadian High Commission. We've met the EU delegation and member states. We've met Christian leaders. We've met the NDC Professional Forum. We've met the National Peace Council. We've met Muslim leaders and so many others.
Yes.
So we try to subject this to them. Okay, these are our propositions. What do you think?
Okay, so this is not an idea that some people have a perception that it's because the NDC feels aggrieved about how its relationship with the Electoral Commission, specifically the chairperson, deteriorated. And so these reforms don't stem from that.
I mean, it will be untruthful to say it's a part of it.
It's a part of it, but it's
broader.
not. It's not the foundation.
It's
or
broader.
It's not predicated
it's
on
broader.
that.
In fact, when we met the TUC, they said, "You people, you sound very nationalistic. Are you sure that in the event that you win power in 2024, you are going to implement these reforms?" And one of them actually took a snapshot. The chairman took a snapshot and said, "I'm going to hold you to your word." And so we tried to go beyond ourselves and say, look, Ghana as Ghana, we've been having several elections. What can we do to improve upon the electoral system? And so based on all these discussions, we've had a lot of fantastic feedback, and the discussions are still ongoing. And we believe that the discussions can only enrich the final input. We've sent a copy to the Electoral Commission. They responded actually and told us that it's been looked at. And that, so we intend to also do an addendum based on the feedback that we've gotten from. So we've collated all the views and inputs, and then we'll send an addendum. And then subsequently, we'll all meet and then look at it.
Okay, based on the feedback you've received so far, which of these, and I know there are some 10 key reforms that are like the big issues, which of these reforms, for want of a better word, are gaining traction?
Okay. So let me deal with what we consider to be
so what's the big reform issues for you?
Okay, so first of all, the first thing is that we think that the process for appointing the Electoral Commission and the commissioners, it's problematic. And we proposed that indeed the EC chairperson, yes, she'll go through the process, should be appointed by the president in consultation with the Council of State. But because the president is also an interested party in an election, more often than not, the EC is then seen as the MPP's EC, NDC's EC. So what you do is that you subject her to prior approval by Parliament. The parliamentarians are the representatives of the people. So when she goes through that process, and with the chairperson of the EC, we're asking for 2/3 of the members of Parliament. So if you're an EC chairperson and you know that you're going to go and face Parliament, and 2/3 of the people are the ones that are going to approve you, it means that, first of all, in even making the choice, the president in making the choice and the Council of State in advising will look out for somebody who has a broad national appeal. That's very important, because you know that you need 2/3 of the members of Parliament to get them through. So the names, when you're doing your shortlist, this name will come up and say, no, this name will not fly, because this name is either 2 NDC or 2 MPP. But you get somebody who all the parties will have relative confidence in the person. So that would help a lot. So
that requires the amendment of Articles 43(2) and 72 of the 1992 Constitution, because the commissioners are appointed by the president. And I think that's also entrenched. And then I know that definitely will go through a very long process.
yes.
But that's something you would like.
One of the feedback we got from TUC, the Christian community, is that we should also go further and break this down into short term and long term. Okay? And so this perhaps will be one of the things that we will look at it, not even long term, but medium term. Because the Constitutional Review Commission of which the current EC chairperson was a member, recommended prior parliamentary approval. And the government white paper on the Constitutional Review Committee also accepted that recommendation. And you know that we are in the process of people are talking about constitutional review, constitutional review, constitutional review. So I don't think it's for nothing that people are talking about it. You know, a democracy must be responsive to the voices of the people. After 28 years of democracy, I think it's about time we start looking at that. So even though it may not be immediate, it's something that I think it will not be long-term but medium-term, because the pressure is growing. We need to look at the whole constitutional architecture. So that's one. Then the second one is that repeal of the requirement for the consent of the AG to be given before the prosecution of electoral offences. As we sit here today, for some strange reason, PNDC Law 284, 1992,
the Representation of the People's Act.
Exactly. That it finds an animal called electoral offences. So ordinarily, when I, God forbid, I slap you, it's assault. The police will prosecute me. But if that slapping happens within the context of an election, then the law says that you needed the written consent of the Attorney General before I can be prosecuted. This is why there's been so many cases of impunity. I mean, you know about how Akumso, she herself confessed that she fired a gun at a polling station. 8 people have died in an election. Nothing has happened to them. Because...
And the case has been discontinued by the police.
That's what we're hearing now. Yeah. So it creates a culture of impunity. And because the Attorney General, who is a cabinet colleague of these appointees, will find it very difficult to prosecute them. But if you take away that requirement, then the police can go ahead and prosecute them. And you see,
but what difference will that make? The police is also an institution of state where the IGP is appointed by the president. It could be that there will also be still political interference from the highest office of the presidency, and so they may still not prosecute. So
then it means that nothing will work in Ghana. Is that what you're saying? Because ordinarily, when you slap somebody, it's assault. That requirement of prior written notification from the AG creates
it's a barrier.
It's a barrier. And so when you remove that, then everybody will know that, look, there's no barrier. If they don't prosecute, then we'll know what to do with it. But
okay, so that requires the amendment of that law.
But it doesn't have to. It's not a constitutional.
It's not a constitutional one. So that for you is doable in the short term.
Exactly. Then, of course, the special designated courts, that can be done through regulation.
Yes.
You know, and then, of course, the removal of names from the register, those are not very, we'll come back to the
Equal
GBC.
Access to GBC
yes.
by political parties.
Yes.
I really marvel that you raised this, because we are now in an era of digital media. The NDC is streaming its activities live on Facebook, on social media. You even have some online television stations favorable to your cause. I've seen instances where you've advertised even the recent press conference last week, and you welcome everyone. I mean, people come in and you don't turn them away. I think you are getting more media than ever before, and GBC covers you as well. Why has this suddenly become an issue?
Do you know that for the past couple of years, GBC has never covered any of our press conferences? Yes.
Even this most recent one?
Yes.
That will have to be verified.
Yes, you can verify it. I'm telling you for a fact. The major difference...
if GBC doesn't cover, has it really impacted? Everyone knows about these reforms, for instance.
The major difference, Jifa, is that Media General is private. You can decide to come or not to come. All the other platforms, they are private. GBC is not private. So they don't have a choice.
It's a national broadcaster.
They are paid by the taxpayer, all of us. And indeed, there is a decided case, Supreme Court, GBC, MPP, New Patriotic Party, incidentally.
Yes. I remember it was J.H. Mensa. It was J.H. Mensa that took that matter
Supreme
to court.
Court of Ghana Law Report 354. It's clear. So you have situations where the president and any president, NDC, MPP, any president at all during election period, he's cutting swords, he's commissioning projects, he's given 6-7 hours, and then they'll give you 10 minutes.
Okay, but so is that also a bit, is that fair to any incumbent government? Because those lines are very thin.
I think that it's a decided case.
Okay.
Okay, so it has to be implemented. I don't want us to dwell
Let's
too much
not
on that.
Okay,
now,
but just a quick one on that.
Mm.
But have you had any formal engagement, for instance, with the current Director General about this concern?
Our communication director has done it. They'll agree, all right, but you know, it's a funny thing. We believe they are not being fair to us,
okay.
And we think that within the political environment, GBC, which is a state-sponsored finance entity, must obey the Supreme Court.
Okay, so if they don't obey the Supreme Court...
So let's go to proposal number 6.
No, just a quick... So if they don't obey the Supreme Court, then what? You go back to court?
We'll look at it, our legal people. Now, the proposal number 6 is that IPAC should be backed by legislation through an amendment to the Electoral Commission Act 1993. And we say that the IPAC has served Ghana's electoral system well, but because it's informal, the EC tends to ignore some of its concerns or even to marginalize it. And so depending on the leadership style and posturing of a particular EC chairperson, and as I gave you the example of Dr. Kojo Afarijan, who was very amenable, their attitude was like, let's bring everybody together. So if you have somebody else who feels, look, IPAC is not important, and yet the same person then goes to form eminent persons group or committee, or what's the name?
I don't recall.
Now, that formation of the eminent persons is a tacit and silent admission that even though the EC is supposed to be independent, it needs external feedback.
It needs advice.
It needs advice. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we think that I've given you copious examples of major reforms that have enhanced our electoral process
emanating
that came
from IPAC.
And therefore, it is important that we look at this carefully. And indeed, the EC's own electoral committee in 2015 made this recommendation. It was adopted by IPAC, accepted by the EC at the time. So we need to look at it. So the EC is independent, but what will be the functions of IPAC, for example? Who attends IPAC? You see, when we say these things, people misinterpret it and say, oh, we don't want the smaller political parties. In representation, there has to be a certain logic, okay? Right now, the NDC has 137 seats, MPP has 137 seats. Other parties don't have any seats. When Madame J. Mensah again was at the IEA, she formed a political parties platform. She insisted that it will be made up of parties with representation in parliament. Why is that? Because there's a certain logic to it. If you've participated in an election, you are a major stakeholder, you've won seats in parliament, you then have a stake. Again, just
a quick one. No, you said there was logic to it, but IEA is also a private institution, and they define based on the resources they have.
So I'm coming back to EC, IPAC. At the EC, IPAC, I told you we've had 2 committees, a technical committee and a legal committee. The technical committee had Dr. Kweno as a member representing the NDC and Mr. McMenu of the MPP. Usually they will have Kabila or somebody like that as a member
from the CPP.
From the CPP. Or worst case scenario, they will take 2 people. As you saw in the electoral reforms membership that I read, there were 2 people representing. Why did they not say that we have 35 political parties and therefore every single political party must have a member?
But that's just a committee.
It's a committee, but there's a logic. Do you understand me? I'm saying there's a logic to it. Okay, so you have NDC represented, MPP represented. Why didn't they say that every single party must be represented? That's the logic I'm talking about.
Okay, but that's just one committee. IPAC is the...
It's both the legal and the
which
technical
are subcommittees of the wider IPAC.
Yes, but it is the logic. Does it not make sense that in a situation where you have 2 major political parties and then other smaller parties, in decision making, there must be some weight as to the inputs of the parties? For instance, in terms of deliberation and everything, every Ghanaian can state his case. But when it comes to critical situations, where, for example, even if you have to vote, you cannot have the same vote. A party that has not participated in any election, has no representation in parliament, has no offices. That is a different matter altogether. But we're saying that when it comes to critical issues that impinge on the future of our elections, there needs to be a clearly defined rules. Otherwise, you have a situation where, when I say it, you say, well, 11 parties appeared. And what we saw was that those parties, when they came in, it appeared as if they came in just to heckle us out of the way so that we won't have a voice. And the whole idea about IPAC is for us to have meaningful inputs. How do we resolve that? We need to discuss it as a country.
So you admit that there is the need to resolve that, because at the end of the day, these other political parties are also supported by Ghanaians who want some input at IPAC. It may also not be fair to say that, well, the two of us, MPP, NDC, we are the biggest. So because of that, it's only our voice that matters.
No, you see, you're getting it wrong. The voice of every Ghanaian matters. Mm-hmm. Every Ghanaian
people matter, you matter.
People matter, you matter, you know, NDC. But in terms of, that is why in some countries they have proportional representation. We don't have. Mm-hmm. But I've given you case studies of even the IEA and the EC itself in constituting committees for IPAC. There's a certain logic about the representation. They take into account the fact that, look, these are the two major parties. The other parties, they are important, but because of the weight they have, we will give them maybe 2, 3, 4 representatives. I mean,
there's a worry, though.
Yes.
There's a worry, though, that we may be creating a monster by clothing IPAC with a legal framework. So we've seen political parties have representation in Parliament, you know, virtually have that representation vanish. If we had a legal framework that determined that it was for only political parties with representation in Parliament, for instance, it will mean that by now, those parties will find themselves on the back end.
So that is not what we are proposing.
I get that.
Okay.
I get that. I get that. But I'm just thinking of the scenarios, because whoever thought that, like the CPP, PNC, will not have any representation
so
in
that is why we are not...
thought that we'll have a near split Parliament.
That is why we are not making that argument.
Okay.
Our argument is that there has to be a certain logic. I mean, this is not very difficult. Unless
I understand.
There has to be a certain logic about when we go to IPAC. Okay?
Who votes?
The same logic. All the parties, if there's room, if we have 100 parties, they should come and participate.
But it's about for you are concerned about the votes and those things.
The decision making process. Okay? There has to be some fairness.
Who would determine what those guidelines or legislative rules would
All
be?
of us.
Okay.
You see, that is why these proposals are out there.
But if somebody feels that they will be disadvantaged, they will not support.
So in 1992, we won by 58%, isn't it? Right? Proposals came for reform. We could have said as a party that I won't agree. So the key issue is, these proposals, do they make sense? Would they enhance our electoral process? I mean, these are the issues that we should look at. I know some people are concerned that if you legislate, let's look at it. Let's listen to the divergent views, you know. And I guess our research team just saw this. IPAC must be regulated by law. And this was on the 6th October 2013. And it was by none other than Gabi Asari Ochedako. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So
IPAC, that's something that you believe can be done in the short term if there is a certain will to make it happen.
Exactly. We will all agree on the rules, and then we'll take it forward. Legislation should also by the chairperson of the EC as the returning officer of the presidential elections to the introduction. Let me link that to one of the Part B reforms. We felt that the introduction of the regional coalition centers was problematic.
Yeah, there was no proper guidelines to guide how it was implemented.
And the EU reports, EU Election Observer Mission report says, is page 41 is very clear. Yeah. Page 41 is very, very, very clear. And what is stated very clearly about the lack of transparency in the way and manner in which the regional coalition centers came out. And indeed, the question is, in the past, you always had results coming from the constituencies sent directly to the EC headquarters. And then the party agents will check, and then the results are declared. What happened? What was the problem? We've had 7 elections, and we've had no problem. And then you bring in regional collation centers. And that rather led to so many problems. And where for the first time in the history of this country, you've had situations where the Electoral Commissioner announced so many different results. It shouldn't happen. So we feel that that is a no.
So there should be no regional collation?
It's not necessary. It's not necessary. Because you see, at the constituency, at the polling stations, the results are declared, then they are collated at the constituency.
Yes.
Okay? So the agents take their results and they send them to their agents in the strong room. And the EC also sends same to the strong room. So by the time the EC's results arrive, our party agents also have ours.
Result.
Okay? But you have a situation where we send our constituency results more often than not. And again, it's in the EU report.
You had your data.
There were differences in the summary. Because the regional results were a summary of the various constituencies.
So there was no transparency to see the individual constituency results.
And we've had case studies where there were actually differences. If you go to the AC website today and you take all the 16 regional summary sheets and you add them up, and you take the various constituencies and you add them up, there's a difference.
There's a difference.
And we shouldn't allow these things to happen. So
is there a way to make the regional collation efficient? Because it seemed like a fantastic idea, such that the headquarters would then receive only 16 results, as opposed to 275.
There's even an issue as to the legality of it. And I think our lawyers should look at it. The chairperson of the Electoral Commission is the sole returning officer for the presidential elections. She's the sole. So what is the legal mandate of the regional collation? In fact, what the CI says is that regional collation officer. So there's no architecture there, unlike the constituency and the national collation center at the strong room, so-called, where there's an architecture and there's a system and there's a process to do the checks and balances. At the regional level, there's nothing. And we are asking that they say if it then broke down, fix it.
So we should go back to the old system, which works well.
Which has been working very well. And indeed, communication between constituencies and the national is sometimes even faster. If you know Ghana very well. So this whole business about,
So we'll take a pause on that, Mr. Afriyie Ankrah, and we'll come back with the others. But let's just take a quick break. And there's always a riveting conversation with Elvis Afriyie Ankrah, for those who know him back from his days as a student leader till now. And we'll be right back after this break. You're welcome back to the Key Points here on TV3 and 3FM, also on DSTV 279 as well as 3news.com. So, Mr. Afriyie Ankrah, so let's come back to the other reforms. I know that there are a few others that of critical importance to the NDC.
That the EC must by law be made a mandatory party to all parliamentary election petitions, just as is the case in the presidential election petitions. As we state today, the EC is not a party to parliamentary petitions. And then the EC must be a compellable witness to produce all public elections and related material and documents relevant to presidential and parliamentary election disputes. I mean, we all saw what happened in the Supreme Court, and I was there, and it's very sad for Ghana, because I recall when we made the application for interrogatories, we made application for examination of documents. All the judges, they said, oh, why don't you wait? When she comes on the witness box, you will be able to ask those questions. I remember, not once, they said it consistently for 3 days when we were making those applications and they were refusing. Now we get to the time where we wanted her to appear on the witness box, and then they use civil procedures to throw that away. So, as we said today, there are many doubts. We knew there were issues with the elections, but even to the average Ghanaian, there are many doubts about what happened. That would have been an opportunity for her to come and show Ghanaians documentary evidence. This was the basis on which I declared the elections. Okay, so you declared the first election, you saw the result. Where are the documents? Show us. Let's see. What computations did you do? so that everybody will be clear in his mind. But you have a situation where the EC was cocooned by the Supreme Court, in our view, and then she was not able to account for her actions. And it's very serious. Elections have very serious consequences. And so we think that we must have this regulation. It's very important so that there will be transparency, and other electoral officials will know that when the time comes, because it's a bad precedent, you know.
That it means they won't be held accountable.
Exactly. You must be held accountable by the highest court of the land. You know, for example, you saw in Techiman, where the returning officer, we asked for the collation. It was live. We asked for the pink sheet, the summary sheet. He said, "I won't give it to you." I mean, what impudence? Why should somebody paid by the taxpayer is supposed to be a neutral arbiter, and then you have the results, you refuse to give it to us? These things should not happen. So there should be regulation. And then this one, which is very novel, split the EC into two separate bodies.
That has come up. That has come up with some criticism about creating a power bureaucracy,
regulation of political parties. You see.
And want to manage the elections.
Because election management is a major issue.
But do we need a separate bureaucracy for that? Don't we just need efficiency? Don't we need the commissioners to ensure that there is efficiency?
We believe that if it is separated, it will help the EC to focus on the election. They should focus on the election itself, so that you have the EC chairperson calling out results and changing them several times. And then the regulation of political parties. For example, we need to be, my pet topic, I mean, my biggest passion, if there's anything I want to achieve in my political life before I vacate this earth, funding of political parties. That's the root cause of our problem. One of them. There are many. Of course, this is not the time for the foolishness and misbehavior, indiscipline. But that is one major cause. And I am a player. I know what goes on. The amount of money we spend at the end of every 4 years to elect people into office, if you know, you collapse. It doesn't make sense. You see, we got into this democracy without thinking of where the money will come from. The other developed countries, the USA, they have the military-industrial complex. They have the Microsoft. They have all these institutions. They can generate the money. We got into this democracy without thinking of where the money will come from. Where is the money going to come from? If we spend even 5% of our GDP on elections, it's not productive money. It's the same GDP or money that from the system that is used in the election. Can you imagine if that amount of money can be brought down to half or a quarter? And that money will be used for productive purposes. So we think that we should be getting to the conversation and talking about funding, state funding of political parties.
So that when the state funds, corruption.
Yeah, when the state funds, then you can regulate. Okay? The countries that are able to regulate are the countries that fund. So we give you money. Don't go beyond this threshold. Don't spend so much. So if you go beyond that, there are stringent sanctions. That is the only way we can solve this problem. Otherwise, that plus greed is a dangerous combination. Because people will go and look for money, borrow money, sell their father's properties and everything, borrow money from banks. They come to power.
And then
they have to find money to pay back. And pay back plus greed. So they will steal 10 times. And then apart from the stealing, then they also have to prepare for the next election. And then because now, then the election becomes monetized. And so you are not getting true democracy because people's consciences are bought. Some of the things that happen in this election is completely, I mean, you've seen the Auditor General's reports, COVID money and all that. So if we're going to deal with it, you need an office that will regulate the political parties. But the activities, first of all, so it may even be an advantage for the smaller parties. Because you create a threshold. Exactly. Create a threshold. Well. Look, yes, you are a small party, maybe you are a regional party, or you are a party that is focused on environmental issues. When the regulations are clear, everything will be clear. And then we will stop this monetization and killing of ourselves for the sake of elections.
Yeah, so you've put out these reforms and you know, there's been a strong defense put up. You've indicated that the EC says they've received it. Yes. Do you have a certain timeline within which you're hoping that at least you can see some come to light?
we believe that because these are not impositions, first of all, the most important is the public discussion and debate, where there are some that we can easily arrive at consensus, even among ourselves, in the public. This can be done, this can be done, this can be done. And mind you, I keep saying that the recommendations are 34, but about 10, 12 of them
are the critical
yes,
ones.
and then some also are coming from the 2015 committee report. So they are not new necessarily. It's just that there are recommendations that have not yet been implemented. So if you look at it from this context, those things are not entirely new. And there are some that quickly, again, a very important point. We think that the voting period of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. should be maintained.
I'm told that you were at IPAC when the suggestion of closing the polls at 3 p.m. was raised, and the NDC supported it because they said it would prevent anything going on under the cover of darkness. What changed your mind?
I wasn't under the IPAC. I don't know about the IPAC. And our position has been very consistent. Why? You see, first of all, we've had 7 elections, open at 7, close at 5. We've never had any problems. So again, back to the American dictum. If it didn't broke, don't fix it. What exactly are you trying to solve? What exactly are you trying to deal with? And they say, oh, we want to prevent collation being done under cover of darkness. Well, when the polls are declared at the polling station, it's moved to a collation center. That process takes between 5 to 6 hours, minimum. So inadvertently, you will definitely have to work in the night.
Whether you close at 3
or not. So that argument doesn't hold at all. In any case, in other democracies, US, everywhere, they work through the night. So what we should rather be looking at is, okay, where we're going to do the collation. How is the environment like?
Right,
provide,
availability of people to police the process.
Secondly, don't bring soldiers there or people who look like soldiers but they have beard and earrings to come and shoot innocent people. We'll talk about that. We have to talk about that because this is the first election in Ghana that 8 people have lost their lives. The president hasn't said anything about it, but let me not digress yet. Then, very, very, very critically, Ghana is not Accra. If you live at Ridge, you live at East Legon, Kokomlemle, you can just stroll and go to your polling station. Those of us who really know Ghana, in Afram Plains, for instance, people have to cross the river.
I know the Dija Islands.
Dija Islands.
You have to cross and travel by boat.
And first of all, the electoral materials doesn't get there early enough. And then by the time the people cross and come, it's 3 o'clock. You have a pandemonium. And then you have a situation where, because electoral materials don't go, we've had situations in previous elections where even voting had to be extended to the next day. 3, most of our farmers and fishermen, they are people who like to
farmers.
Go to farm in the morning in the cool of the day, and then they come and go and vote.
Isn't it just because the election day is not declared a public holiday?
But if it's declared a holiday, the average farmer or fisherman doesn't care about holiday. No, if it's not Tuesday that traditionally they won't fish, or a day where they are not allowed to go to the farm, it doesn't make any difference to them. The average farmer or fisherman wants to go to that farm early in the morning, and I've been in the village, I've lived in the village, I started school in the village, so I know what I'm talking about. Early in the morning, go and get his firewood, get some, and come, and then get ready and go and vote. So we are not going to create any problem.
So we should stick to the 5 p.m.
Stick to the 7 to 5
p.m. Okay, so I need you to wrap up on this.
Establish election adjudication committees at the national and constituency levels at administrative dispute resolution mechanisms for first instance grievances against decisions and actions of election officials. Right now, as it stands now, whenever there's a dispute, the only resort is go to court. But some of the issues can be resolved. For example, if you recall Sene West, where there was an issue about a particular ballot box, and all that needed to be done was to just recount that particular ballot box. It was up and down, they had to go to court, and then the court ordered, go and recount. And they went to recount, and that was it. So we need an election adjudication committee at the national level. For example, in this election, in my office, with Tony Lita and Marietta and all those people, we wrote a petition to the EC. The petition was sent to the EC. It was during that time. In fact, let me let people, Ghanaians, know that because of the issues and the complaints that we had met the Peace Council earlier. The Peace Council had arranged that we're going to have a meeting with the EC to look at the issues. It was based on that Madam J. Mensah told Rojo and Co. that go and inform your flag bearer that the Peace Council has intervened and therefore there's going to be a meeting to look at all your issues. And they left, and then she announced the results. If we had this EAC, our issues would have been looked at. In various constituencies, issues would have been looked at. We look at it if they cannot be resolved before we go to court. But right now, when there's any dispute, the first resort is court, and we think that is not proper. Finally, and most importantly, the EC should be required to publish details of all election results on polling station by polling station and constituency by constituency.
I know that hasn't happened since 2016.
Yes. In fact,
maybe since 2004.
If you recall, Rojo, Metonunu, and the late squadron leader, so
they went to court. It's true.
And the court ruled that it wasn't necessary. But I think that with the evolution...
Yeah, but I think formally since 2016, really, which is when we hoped with these expensive procurements of machines and all that in an effort to make things efficient, we haven't had that.
It enhances democracy and transparency. Let's know if there's nothing to hide. Let's everybody know the results are declared at the polling station. Put it on your website, and so we can all verify.
All right. Elvis Afriyie Ankrah, Director of Elections for the NDC there. But we are still talking about the NDC. Away from that, you know, the NDC's 2020 flag bearer, John Mahama, had spent the last week or so on a thank you tour, primarily focused in the northern sector. He visited the Savannah region, the Upper East, Upper West, Northeast regions, where he talked about many things. He talked about electoral reform. He also talked about some of the issues during the 2020 elections. He talked about development issues, Agenda 111, and also projects that his government initiated, which are yet to be complete. Well, one of the issues he did mention was the creation of new regions, which he felt that we should have proper structures in place, and that the current administration did not do enough to put those structures in place. Well, the NPP's General Secretary, John Boadu, has been speaking to that issue. Let's hear him.
His comments on the creating of the 6 regions is embarrassing. He accused President Akufo-Addo of creating regions in name, or in name only, without development. He's so wrong on both counts. Facts are that the people in the affected regions, Western, Bron, Ahafo, Volta, and Northern, did petition the then fresh president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, after they failed to get the attention and the cooperation of the former president. The Mama and his NDC have no shame. After disrespecting and damning the EC and its leadership throughout the electioneering campaign, they have the gut to call on the EC to undertake electoral reforms, even after refusing to attend the opportune platform provided by the EC for all political parties to meet and undertake a review of the conduct of the 2020 elections. The NPP has said that we are not going to dignify their so-called proposals for electoral reforms by responding to them in the media. The media, as well as the international community, cannot be the right forum for such an exercise. We are a disciplined political party and respect rules. We do not play to the gallery. We are a serious political party, and so if the NDC is serious about their demands for electoral reforms, they should table it at the right forum.
And that was John Boadu, the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. Let me take some of your messages, and then I'll come back to Mr. Afriyie Ankrah, who is still with us in studio. This one from Aziz Nwa says, the electoral reforms the NDC is proposing are accurate, reliable, functionally, and timely because reforms enhance confidence in the election process. Madam Jean Mensah needs to do the needful. This one from Munkaila says, so there is no elderly person in the NDC to do the right thing. How can they propose electoral reforms in the media but not at IPAC? The entire NDC must appreciate the fact that the power is not won on the ground but through serious campaign and well thought out strategy. So instead of the NDC wasting time preparing the minds of their supporters that by all means they are winning elections 2024, they should rather be telling us about their policy alternatives. And a final message from Kwame says, Jifa, please note that in terms of the presidential election, the whole country is one and only one constituency. And that is why since 1992, there's been only one collation center for the presidential elections at the EC headquarters. The 2020 addition of a regional collation center was to introduce 16 centers of inefficiency, opaqueness and corruption into our presidential election collation process, resulting in the massive failures we've seen. It's a pity that the NDC did not see through this manipulation far ahead. Thank you very much for your messages. You can send us some more before we wrap up on the program on 055-369-8789. So, Mr. Afriyie Ankrah, the NDC's 2020 flag bearer has been on a thank you tour. I know that this tour has delayed partly because of the COVID pandemic. And so he did take his time to go around quite a bit and talked about a number of issues. But first, a quick response to Mr. John Boadu's suggestion that the party and the flag bearer for 2020 have been disingenuous by seeking to suggest that the creation of these regions were not done based on a certain process and structure.
Okay, so first of all, it is important that as political leaders, when we speak, we must speak based on facts and do a little bit of research. It will help. Because if you go back to our 2016 manifesto, the NDC's 2016, it was clearly stated that if we had won power, we were going to split some regions. It was very clear. There's no issue about that. And that is why when the MPP started the process, we gave them our wholehearted support. That was the first time that for a major policy like that, you had the two political parties agreeing, because it was in our manifesto. So creation of regions, as John Boadu is saying that we did not respond to the people, is not true. It was in our manifesto. And if we had one power, we had that. But the most important point is that the issues that were raised by President Mahama are not issues that are coming out of his own imagination. First of all, when you go to those regions, you will see for yourself, okay?
The infrastructure deficit you are worried about.
Is very clear. And two, when he calls on the chiefs and the people, that is the feedback he gets. And as a responsible leader, a former president and immediate past flag bearer, he has every right to draw the attention of the government that, look, don't just create regions in names, but provide the needed infrastructure. I think it's a very legitimate call. You know, what I've seen is that the MPP on a daily basis, because of the things they thought they had gotten away with in 2020, they are becoming very arrogant and disrespectful to Ghanaians. They talk down on everybody. And you see, I keep telling them, we should learn lessons. You're not going to be in power forever. Power is transient. So when the people are saying that, look, you've created a region, even administrative offices we don't have. We don't have any infrastructure. Again, you have a situation where we left 123 schools, community-day schools. We completed about almost 50. The rest, they are in the bushes rotting. When we go around...
The 50 figure you put out is not the figure that is known to us. We know that 20 or so were completed.
No, it's about 40.
The current administration has completed an additional 28 or so, coming to that 50. Mm-hmm. So you didn't complete 50 by the time you left office.
I think it was 40 something, because I don't
have
the
specific... Or they were at various stages of completion.
No. About 40 also had been completed, and then the rest of the 100 and out of the 123, if you take away the 40, 80 something, were at various stages of completion. When we go around, they show us. These are the schools you left behind. Some are 90% complete, 80% complete, 70%, 60, 50, 40% complete. They've been left for rodents. You look at hospitals. You go all over the country. Go to Sewa, a major hospital fashioned after 37 military hospitals, even bigger than that. About 60% complete.
The government has provided explanation that these hospitals under the Eurojet project program suffered funding challenges partly because of COVID, because obviously these monies are coming from abroad. It's only in recent times this year that we've seen some of the projects coming through.
Which of the projects? Which of them?
The WA hospital, we are told, is
only talk. We're going to do a comprehensive documentary, and we'll invite you, the media, tell you various projects in education, in health. Look at the Commander Sugar Factory, for instance.
But the Commander Sugar Factory wasn't even as active before you left office.
But that has been 5 years. How can it? It wasn't an active. We were on the verge of they had started test production. 5 years. You've left it to rot. And there should be consequences for this kind of behavior. So, President Mahama's thought and the fact that he's bringing up the issues that are germane and of concern to the people is hitting the MPP. And that is why he will come out with such unresearched and unscientific diatribes. So I'm sure Ghanaians can judge for themselves. But we are speaking facts. And we have not finished the talk. And this is just
yes,
phase
I was
one.
just about to ask. So that's just phase one.
Oh, that's just phase one. He's going to go everywhere. He's going to go everywhere, to every single region. And it's been designed such that because of COVID, he cannot meet large numbers of people. But we use the media effectively, and he's able to speak to the people. And when we go out there and speak to the people, believe me, they are listening to us. The interesting thing is that many people, when you go around, everybody is denying that they voted for the MPP. Everybody is denying, oh, we didn't vote for them. Well, some people voted for them. Some people also voted for us. They manipulated the elections, they used violence, but whatever it is.
But in terms of those figures, in terms of the...
four more, we have only done 8 months. We have 3 years and 4 months to go. So we are all inside. But, four more.
Okay, so...
We haven't even done 1 year. You see how we are suffering?
Okay,
but we all day inside.
But
so they should revise their notes.
Okay, but the point is, even for 2024, where there's a view that you political parties only live for elections, the view or the perception out there is that now we've seen both the NPP, we've seen the NDC as well. So for 2024, you both have to work hard to earn the votes of Ghanaians. It's not guaranteed that maybe the NDC will win. It's not guaranteed that the MPP will be re-elected.
The work I've done since I left university, apart from private, is elections. I understand elections very well.
How do you see the 2024 elections then?
2024 elections is ours to win.
Is it a make or break?
Well, it will depend on the structures and institutions that are put in place.
Okay, you say it's yours to win.
To win.
Why?
We will win the 2024 elections because, you see, if you look at the 2020 elections, and if you look at the stupendous amounts of money that were pumped into that election, I mean, in some constituencies in the north, for instance, they were spending as much as 1 million Ghana cedis per constituency. And then you look at the fact that, and in any case, we won the parliamentary elections, clearly. John Boedu, he said it. I have the video here.
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, yes, I have it.
I'm not sure about that.
I have it. Jifa, you can play it.
You can, please forward it to me, because I'm not sure he said that. I don't think a general secretary of the ruling party will say that the NDC won, the opposition
he said it.
won.
It's not.
I think the debate has been, considering how close, how near split the election at the parliamentary level was, and the concern about, changes, changes at the electoral figure, it leads to a questioning of the credibility of some of the results or some of the constituencies in contention. Unfortunately, those issues are still in court.
That is fine English. It's good. You are a journalist, you can speak your fine English. For us, the elections were stolen. When they realized that they were losing, they deployed thugs wearing military uniforms, some wearing beards with earrings, and they went and shot innocent people, and they stole the votes. Those are the facts. And the president of this republic has not been able to say anything about it. His blood is on his hands, and he's building a cathedral. He has blood on his hands.
But Mr. Afriyie Ankrah, there are court cases that are ongoing.
Yes.
If really you felt that the votes were stolen, the view is that even at the Supreme Court, you could not prove that.
No,
you
at
could
the
not
Supreme
show
Court,
that it was about the presidential.
But even we have
But you could not show
those
that.
cases are in court.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, at the Supreme Court, the court did not allow us to ask the questions that needed to be answered.
But why
because
didn't
if we had asked those questions, you declared results. Produce the document. This one too is a rocket science.
But
produce the documentary evidence that formed the basis of you declaring results 6 times, unprecedented in this country.
The alternative view
You
was
cannot
that
give us legal strategy because, you see, let me tell you something. We have been to court with the MPP before. They brought pink sheets. Go and read the judgment of the court. So we're not daft. When you are going to court on a case, you do your research and you look at what the judges say on various issues, and then you build your case based on those precedents. So you look at when pink sheets were produced, what was the posture of the Supreme Court?
So if you are taking pink sheets, you are saying that would have gone against the party.
But I mean, and I'm sorry to say this, but I was in court almost every day. From the posture of the court and the fact that consistently on every single issue there was unanimity. Even if we had taken all the pink sheets in this world and hired Angel Gabriel as witness with Angel Michael as technical whatever it is, it would have still been unanimous. Unfortunately, that is my view. Because it appeared as if they had just made up their minds that they were not going to listen to us.
Okay, so you said that the 2024 election is yours to win. What's going to be different? It was deemed that you had a good manifesto for
fantastic manifesto. It wasn't just a good manifesto. It was a fantastic manifesto. And so the texter who said that we should bring our alternatives, we've already brought our alternatives.
Is that or you look at that manifesto again and decide if it's going for 2024?
But you see, there's also a very erroneous perspective out there. And my friends, very, very dynamic, hardworking, fix the country people, some of them tend to make that comment. Oh, NDC and MPP are the same. It's not true. It's not true. The facts do not show. So, take sector by sector. Education sector. Compare the NDC's performance. We built universities, we built polytechnics, we built SHS. Okay? As we speak today, the free SHS, which is the flagship program of the MPP, the teachers, now they are saying that the schools will be closed down because the students don't have food. Some of the students have been deboardinized. That is the major flagship, that is the major achievement of the MPP government.
Okay, so you talk about roads, you talk about health,
various
roads,
sectors, everything.
Infrastructure.
Super.
So based on that,
evidence to show. Again, we were in this country when Dr. Bawumia and Nana Akufo-Addo, we are borrowing too much. We don't need to borrow. And the money is in this country. I worked at Bank of Ghana. All those videos are there. You come into office and you have borrowed, we borrow 53 billion. We have things to show. We have universities to show. We have polytechnics to show. We have schools to show. We have hospitals to show. We have roads to show. When they fall sick, they go to the UGMC, University of Ghana Medical Center. They go there. Okay? We have things to show, tangible. You have borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. We've crossed 300 billion. 300 billion. You alone, you've borrowed about 250 billion. What do you have to show? When you ask them, they say free SHS. The free SHS alone.
Free SHS, 1D, 1F.
Where is that? Which one district what? One
planting
factory.
For food and jobs.
Planting for which food and jobs?
Year of roads.
What's a one village, one dam? Yes. Dugouts. So this is, let me, you see, you like to speak fine English. These people are thieves.
No, please, we cannot make that accusation here because we don't have any proof of that.
Hold on.
We don't have any proof of that, so we can't call people thieves.
Okay.
We can't say that.
Stealers.
We can't say stealers.
So which one? You know the good English. Which one?
We can't make allegations against people without
listen, okay,
a proof.
okay.
So, but anyway, we have to wrap up. Your final comments.
Corruption. Nanado, okay, appointed Martin Amidu as a special prosecutor. When he appointed, he said he has confidence in him. He knows that he's incorruptible. He can do very well. Okay? That special prosecutor, after a few years, comes back and said, I was completely deceived. The man I thought was against corruption is actually the mother serpent of corruption.
It's interesting
that one,
that
I didn't say it though.
Yes, but it's interesting you use Martin Amidu's words against
but
the
it's their own man.
Administration, knowing how the NDC ended up in a battle with him. But
yeah, we had battles with him. But Nanado and his MPP said he's a saint, he's super.
No, they didn't say that.
Okay, he's very competent, he's incorruptible, right? The man comes out and says the president is the mother serpent. You know what the mother serpent
is? That is his opinion.
Or what
But anyway, that's where we have to end
corruption.
Thank you very much, Elvis Afriyie Ankrah.
Always an interesting Auditor General, you sacked him because he was exposing you.
And that's where we bring an end to the key points. And Elvis Afriyie Ankrah, once he gets into his element, you can't stop. But it's been great having him. Hope he comes again. Thank you all for joining us. My pleasure being with you today. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. Thanks to the entire production team. Up next is Warm Up Plus. My name is Jifa Bampo.